what does manhood mean to you? What does it mean being a man? Because we live in a society where, being a man can be seen as, someone that has the most money or sleeping with the most women or, material things, right? So I think we're kind of losing touch as to what man really is. Yeah. So I don't know, to you, what do you believe that manhood is? So this men are trash age. So that way.
I don't even get me started on that.
What are your thoughts? And how do we change this narrative? Like the red pill movement, with them Andrew Tate, them guys, those sides.
It's like a hyper masculinity of some
so
sort.
I don't know. Have you followed stuff like that much?
Yeah.
And why do you think that movement is growing really fast? And how do you advise young men that are seeing Andrew Tate saying fuck bitches, sleep with 50, you have to be a man, you have to sleep with 50 women, it's all about what you can, you have to be a high value man, you have to have all the cars, this and that and that. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Welcome to the Emeka Nwani Show, brought to you by Our House Studios. Here I'll bring interesting discussions with leading individuals in various fields, discussing their successes, setbacks, and everything in between. I also hope I can bring one or two laughs along the way. Welcome to the Emeka Nwani Show. Today I have a very special guest in the building. He's the founder of the Man Up Initiative, which is a platform designed for and targeted at young men that touches on things such as men's mental health, leadership, and a lot more. His name is Temidayo Seriki. Welcome, bro. How you doing? Good to have you.
Thank you.
When I heard about what you do with the Man Up Initiative, which we'll get into, I knew we just had to sit down. Because first of all, June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and what Temidayo does with the Man Up Initiative is so great, touching on so many things and so many conversations that us as men should be having. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about a lot of these things, a lot of the challenges men face, a lot of the issues in society that, again, men face, the narratives that, are about men. And again, part of a big reason why I do this show is to have these conversations, and I'm trying to reach young Nigerians, reach young men, and I feel Temidayo is one of the best people in the country to have this conversation with.
In the whole country.
Again. Okay, bro. So first of all, how are you doing? Thank you for coming in. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Can't complain. Just, going through the motions of wedding planning, living life, working. Yeah, I'm good. Honestly, I can't complain about anything.
So
right now.
how is Lagos stressing you in this season?
I don't know if timeline, right? But as we're recording this, there's currently a strike going on. Yeah. And there hasn't been lights in my house for the last 2 days. And it's just the most jarring thing. But I mean, thank God for provisions, I guess. Because I can't complain. This one I can't complain. But yeah, what can we do?
Thanks for coming again, bro. Okay, so before we get fully into everything, can you just give us a bit of your background? As let's say your childhood, but mainly why you decided to create the Man Up Initiative and what the Man Up Initiative is.
Okay. That's an interesting one. I don't think anyone has ever asked me to talk about my childhood before. But okay, so a bit of my childhood is, I guess, so I grew up with me, my mom, my dad, my two sisters, so we were 5 of us. Somewhere along the line, my parents split.
Okay.
And I was pretty young when that happened. I think I was in year 8 or year 9. So I was probably 12, 13, thereabouts. So I spent a lot of my formative years with my mom and my sisters. And based on due to the nature of how we lived our lives, we didn't really, my mom decided to get very conservative. So I wasn't really exposed to too many things. When we traveled, we were just be 4 of us, things like that. So I think I was raised by her for the most part, as far as I'm concerned. And then, so this was this was going on for a long time, maybe 10 years. And then maybe when I was about 21, she passed.
Okay.
And then I had the choice of okay, do I want to reconnect with my dad? Do I want to? And then obviously, God really helped me at that time, honestly. But then I decided to speak to my dad, reconnect, and who turned out that he also had, him, my stepmom, a new family. Well, not really a new family, but,
Yeah.
So yeah, now we have a beautiful blended family. Love all of them. They're actually the best. And yeah, so I feel like starting Man Up was interesting because the reason I moved back was because I was stuck, right? So my mom had died just as I was about to finish uni.
Okay.
I had a lot of plans that hinged on her. And when she died, like my plans kind of died with her. So it was kind of, I was literally like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. So my dad was just like, that I should come to Nigeria. Bear in mind, like before that, I hadn't been back in like 7-8 years. So I didn't even know what I was coming back to. So he was just like, yeah, come back, try and just start again, try and get a job, do NYC. And then, during that time, you can kind of figure it out. So I came back to Nigeria almost empty. Like I didn't really have anything in my hands. I just literally came. And then I think, at some point I realized that I'm in this headspace. I don't have anyone to really help me.
Okay.
I felt like I needed a mentor. I felt like I needed a man that can help me. That's not my dad, because obviously he's your dad. So the relationship is kind of different. And then one day I was we used to go to Elevation as a family. And then I was in church and they were talking about this women's conference thing that they were doing. Man, I wish you heard it. They was talking about like, oh, they're going to help you with this. They're going to talk about business. They're going to talk about your personal life and your mental health. And I was like, And I went after the service to ask one of the pastors, I was like, is there anything like this for guys? They were like, oh, no, that they're trying to start something, but there isn't anything. I was like, okay, what, cool. So that happened. And then maybe over the course of like a month, I was just like,
so like, how old were you at this stage?
Then I was 21.
21, okay.
Yeah, I think it was around 2018, I think it was about then. So I was like 21, about to turn 22. And then I was talking to some of my friends just in conversation, like, can you imagine? There's nothing. And then everybody just kept on saying, oh, why don't you start it? I was like, one day I just said, okay, you know what? This is actually how Man of started. I was with a friend in my house. We were just chatting and she was like, just record something and say you're doing it. I was like, what? I didn't have any plan. I didn't even know what I was doing. Just said, yeah, just make a video and post it. That's literally how it happened. Then now it's become like, a platform, I guess.
And that's great to hear, bro. Like, because I was going to ask you, do you feel you were that child that, okay, first of all, actually, let's define. So what is Man Up? Like, what's what you trying to achieve? You said, we wanted a space for men. But can you like give us like maybe a brief summary as to what Man Up initiative is?
So I think the best way to describe Man Up is more of like a community it's a community that allows and enables men to just be themselves, really. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. And that's the goal, right? So the goal is really just to make that community bigger until it's no longer Man Up's community, until it's just the way things are.
So now looking back, do you feel you were that boy / teenager and man that needed Man Up when he was growing up? Or do you think you were able to navigate through life pretty easily until like before the tragedy happened with your mom?
I don't think so. I think I definitely needed Man Up because I feel like, my mom was great, but I feel like there were a lot of things, and obviously maybe because of the dynamics of how I grew up, there were a lot of things that I just didn't know, in terms of just, I guess, things that a man can teach you. And obviously maybe if my dad was around, he would have taught me, which is teaching me now, right? Which is cool. But like, I just feel like certain things, like I had a lot of anger issues when I was young. I never really knew what to do with my emotions. So I can punch a door if I'm upset, like, and things like that. I just feel like maybe I just needed someone to just tell me to talk about my problems. But one thing my mom always did, though, she never, I feel like my mom was also raised like a man, quote unquote, because she was the firstborn out of 5 girls.
Okay.
I think her dad is like, I couldn't have a man, so I'm going to raise my firstborn like a man. So my mom was also sometimes like, are you crying? Are you baby?
Yeah.
Things like one time, bear in mind, guys, I love my mom, but she was great. But like one time I told my mom that, they were bullying me in school, that somebody said my eyes were big. She just removed her glasses. She did like this. It was like, are my eyes not big? I was like, okay, but like, I guess it helps me kind of, just, so a lot of what she did helped me in like a lot of different ways, but I would definitely say that like, if I had something like this to engage with growing up, or if I had somebody constantly drumming it into my mind that a lot of things are okay, I think it would have definitely helped or gone a long way.
I think the name is actually very interesting because, like you said, with like what your mom said, when we hear as men, man up. I remember when my grandma passed, and I remember I was emotional, and there was like an older, I don't say a family figure, but an older person that was like, a man, stop doing, why are you crying? And so when I heard the name, so the man, it's almost like kind of,
it's like
it's a twist,
completely
right?
Switch.
So it's like man up, but in a different way, because the whole idea of men having to man up has been kind of what has caused a lot of problems for men because we have to man up.
Exactly.
So I found that interesting.
It's now trying to like change what that means.
Yeah.
So now a lot of my friends joke when they say man up, it's like, why are you keeping your emotions inside? Like man up. Like, you guess.
Yeah. No,
so which is great.
I love that. So again, before we move the conversation forward, being a man and manhood, again, I think we have to kind of set our stall on what certain things mean. So what does, again, tough question. But like, what does manhood mean to you? What does it mean being a man? Because we live in a society where, being a man can be seen as, someone that has the most money or sleeping with the most women or, material things, right? So I think we're kind of losing touch as to what a man
really
is.
Yeah.
So I don't know, to you, what do you believe that manhood is?
Okay, so again, it really is a tough question, I would say. And I don't think there's one, the answer is this and that's it. But what I always like to say is two things. One, I think manhood is leadership in service. That's actually what I think fundamentally manhood should be. And personally, I say that because I follow Jesus and that's how Jesus lived his life. And I think that's literally an exemplary man of who he knew when to put his foot down. He knew when to show his emotions. He was able to serve and wash people's feet. And personally, I feel like if more men were like that, we'll have a much better and smoother society as far as I'm concerned. And then the other thing is that I've just found that a lot of manhood is measured by what you have as opposed to who you are. And I think that needs to flip because who you are is really what's on the forefront. I mean, the way society is now, okay, the car you're driving, people can, like there's some estates I go to, if I drive a particular car, they won't ask me any questions at the gate. But if I drive another car, they will open my boots and make sure that I'm not carrying anything, so there's that in society, but I feel like fundamentally we should really be focused on who you are as a person. Like, what are your values? Things like that. Like, how do you treat your family? How do you treat women? How do you treat etc. etc. Yeah.
I love that because the words I actually have down here, you said leadership, service, have discipline.
Oh, you have that?
Yeah, so I did my own list of definition as well. Emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And then I now put some of the traditional roles as well. So we're going to talk about that. So I also have, of course, there has to be the aspect of provision and protection. But again, that's a bit tricky. So I want to know, like, we're going to touch on things like toxic masculinity and things like that a bit more. But what are your thoughts in terms of the traditional gender, like those traditional traits apparently a man should have? So along with the leadership service, do you believe we're also, in terms of protection, provision, do you think a man should be judged on things like that?
Judged is a word I wouldn't associate with that.
Okay.
But I would say that personally, I feel like, someone who's getting married as well, I had to really take time to think about what my views are on this. And I've realized that, at least for me, I believe that I should be a provider in my home. But then the problem is thinking that because I'm a provider doesn't mean my wife cannot also help out and provide. And like, I feel like a lot of guys, it's to your own detriment if you don't allow your wife to work, for example, because it's like, why do you want to put all that stress on yourself? Like, one thing my dad always used to tell me was that, because fortunately, I grew up with two parents who ran their own businesses and were quite successful. You could argue that my mom's business was, you could not even argue, my mom's business was significantly bigger than my dad's. But my dad always used to say that, and he still says it today, that it was like one of his greatest joys because he didn't really have to stress too much. And that doesn't mean that he wouldn't take responsibility for things, but at least he knows last, well, okay. And I feel like that is kind of a thing that a lot more men should embrace. And I would also say that I understand why it's hard, because when you are taught that you should be the one providing, the moment your wife starts providing, you feel like you're losing a bit of yourself. So I can empathize a bit, but I just feel like it's a real shift. It has to be a shift in your mind that you actually have to intentionally go through so that you can come out of it free.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it makes your life easy. But then on the general, so just, I think, I don't know if I answered your question, but to try and answer specifically, I would say that I think roles are what you make it in your house. I think while doing marriage counseling, I realized that, please also bear with me. People always say I say my fiance, my girlfriend together. I'll try not to, but while doing marriage counseling, I realized that no two relationships are the same. So it's almost ridiculous to judge my relationship because of what you are doing in your house. So I just feel like whatever works for you and your partner, you both need to discuss that. And then if she likes to cook and wash plates, fine. If she likes to cook and you wash plates, fine. Yeah. If you like to cook and she can wash plates, fine. Like, whatever the case may be, like, it just needs to be agreed. And it's not up to anyone how I should live my life in my house, basically.
Yeah, no, there's some great points there. I think when you said instead of being judged on, let's say, the provision and protection, and I think part of what we'll get to mental health and the fact that it's like 76% of men commit suicides, or suicides are by men.
By men, yeah.
And when you judge yourself on these things, and especially with also the poor coping mechanisms we have, poor friendship networks at times, and you're judging yourself on provision, for instance, and God forbid, provision stops, then you're not a man anymore.
Yes,
you understand?
it's so crazy.
So you can imagine how the toll on men in those situations. Well, I think an interesting point I had on these things were we as men, we created like society and infrastructure, right? What we did, like the physical, the buildings. I mean, there's the patriarchy, as people say. So I mean, men kind of created the world. Of course, they're a bit different now, but
in
we
terms of like literally,
literally created. So someone would argue that maybe we're complaining about mental health or complaining about these things, but like these structures and these societal norms and these pressures are put on men by men, right? In the sense where be strong, man up. Generally, it's kind of still men putting that pressure on men. So I find that dynamic interesting. Would you say how much of a part do you feel men ourselves have in these pressures that men go through?
I think like most of it.
Yeah.
Like, because like I feel like it's a good observation as well, because I feel like if you look at the way women interact with each other, there's a lot more support, right? They tend to support each other more. The chances are, if you're having an argument with a lady outside and another lady comes, her instinct is going to be, what did this guy do to this girl? Because she's programmed to back the woman, right? But I feel like as guys, we don't really have that, right? And that's what needs to be built in society. And I think when it comes to men putting more pressure on men, I think it's 100% fact. But I would also say that, women have a massive part to play in this as well, because I can equally say, for example, a lot of men will tell you that the reason they chase money first is because no woman will talk to you if you don't have money.
Yeah.
And women say this openly, for example. So that also adds to the pressure. So I feel like yes, men have a part to play, but it would be unfair to say that's the, men on men, like men just need to support men and that would be the end of the problem.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think a lot of women also feed into this patriarchy that has become toxic and that has become strenuous to like our mental health as men. And those are the things that needs to change, if not. And then I would also add like parenting as well. Like I find that a lot of, especially the men that you say build society like brick by brick, right? A lot of those men, they were taught that being a man is going out, poking your back.
I'll touch on there. I'll touch on that. I'll touch on that part, like when it comes to men's and like male relationship, men's relationship.
There's also that. So when we come back,
So like your thoughts on men's mental health, especially, and why we struggle so much. Like what reasons do you think? Why do you think we struggle more so than women? I'm not saying that women don't, but we do struggle more than women when it comes to mental health.
You can definitely argue that 100%. I think. So it's layers, right? So I feel like it's similar to like saying a snowball effect, but it's not really that. It's like there's stages in terms of when it comes to mental health, right? So there's a stage of I have a problem. Then there's a stage of what do I do with that problem? And then the stage of like how do I react to the problem, right? So for men, you have a problem. So it's like men were being shot in the foot at all three stages. One, you have a problem, but you're programmed to keep your problems to yourself. So a lot of men are already going to fall off there. The second stage, okay, you decide you want to talk to somebody, or let's say your friends are asking you questions. Okay, let's say you are open-minded, you're asking me, I'm refusing to tell you. And then because I've kept all these things in my mind so much, sometimes it might not even lead to suicide. Sometimes it can lead to just anger. Like somebody else will come and talk to me, I'll just like, or I'll just, I can maybe, God forbid, somebody can be abusive to their wives or something, just because they're dealing with some issue that they've just harbored in for so long. So I think, if I was to like give a proper answer, I would just say like, I think parents really just need to do a better job in encouraging the men of tomorrow, especially, to just understand that. And I think I see it happening, to be very honest with you. But I would say that, I don't know, I can't really speak for the common Nigerian parents, but I would say like, at least within the sphere of people that I can see that are parents, I feel like a lot of their sons are a lot more encouraged to speak about things. So that's, I can say, is fine. Not fine, but we're getting there. But I think for us who we've already like been brought up to a certain extent, like we now need to reprogram our own minds. But some of the problems I would definitely say is like a lot of guys we don't know how to talk about problems. We don't feel comfortable talking to our guys about problems. I think that's another thing. A lot of guys will tell you that they'd rather talk to women about their issues than men, which is understandable, to be honest. But like, that also needs to change. societal pressures of, if you don't have money,
Yeah.
you know.
So I was going to say social media. So like in terms
Oh
of
my
that,
gosh.
so like
Social media is
that's
literally,
societal pressure. So you
yeah.
see
You
your
see
mates
all
from
sorts,
school
man.
has this and this, this person has this, person has that. It's I can imagine. And again, because of I said we're already holding things in naturally, right? And you're
And then you're
internalizing
now
internalizing
yeah.
all that. You don't go for therapy as much, this and that. So
I think, sorry, just on this, I feel like I really should just say that I feel like as a guy, the worst thing you can do to yourself is compare yourself to someone else, especially if you don't know that person personally and all you're seeing is their social media, because you don't know what they're going through. Like, I battled with this for a really long time where friends of mine, people I know, I'll just see them, I'm like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And it always made me feel a bit inadequate. But then I reached a point with God as well. God helps me as well, to be honest. But I reached a point where I realized that everybody's running their own race. And the only person that should run my race with me is my wife. That's it. Like, everybody else said, do your thing. Okay, cool. Oh, you got a new job. Mad, happy for you. Congratulations. I'll work hard and do my best. But ultimately, everyone is running their own race. And I think what's really missing in society now, especially Nigeria, is contentment. I feel like a lot of people are not content with whatever it is because somebody on social media always has more than you. If I buy a new, let's say I buy the latest Camry, cool, mad achievement, right? But then I go out and I see somebody driving a GLE or something. It's like, that's the car I want. Do you get what I mean? And then now you're no longer content with the car you just got.
Comparison is a thief of joy.
It is. And I feel like the sooner we can understand that, like, honestly, the better it will be for us as a society because it's a killer. It is.
When again talking about these male relationships, so you mentioned like fathers, so I think it's something that has been passed down, like how this generation, like I want as I become a dad, I want to be more empathetic and be more present emotionally for my children. Not saying like my dad wasn't or our dads weren't, but I think they could only provide the kind of care and emotional support that they knew how to. So I think it's up to us to break that cycle. So when you like when we show that empathy to our sons and create that dynamic, how much of a difference do you think it will make? One, and two, do you think that can you raise boys like we do girls? Because we say we should raise your children the same, but also our children are going to grow into a world that is has those expectations still. So it's kind of tricky that you have to break those cycles, but at the same time prepare them for a tough world.
Reality, really.
Exactly, for reality. So it's a really fine balance. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
This is a very interesting question. And I think best thing I can do is maybe use my dad as an example. So because I didn't grow up with my dad, I didn't really know him. But when I started to have a relationship with him, I realized that he's someone who has been able to find almost a perfect balance between being an emotionally available man, being a present father, physically present, and then being knowing when to assert, knowing when to take leadership and make a decision, knowing when to leave things like that. But what I would say at the core of it is maybe it's because he didn't school in Nigeria, possibly. I don't know whether that's why, but I'm just saying maybe. But he was able to really open up his mind. And I think, the sooner we can do that, because you also asked the question of, I think you also mentioned like our sons, right? And how whether it would affect them. And I think at least for me, it makes a world of a difference because my dad is teaching me how to be a man, quote unquote, in terms of maybe what society thinks, rather, let me say that my dad is teaching me to be a man when it comes to leadership. Because ultimately, you'll be the head of a home, right? And he's teaching me what that means. And that doesn't always mean, every small thing I have to be like, no, we're doing it this my way or the highway. Like sometimes being a head is also knowing when to let someone else decide. Do you get what I mean? So having that humility as well and just finding the right balance. And then also knowing that there will be some times, especially when you're out in the world, where especially at work, it plays out a lot, where you need to put your foot down on something. You need to assert yourself on something. You need to you need to show your views on something in a way that maybe somebody might not agree, but it's okay. Like, do you get what I mean? And I feel like that's really the kind of place we need to get to. How to get there, I think, is one, I think it just needs a lot of humility. It needs a lot of prayer. And you need to become the person you want your child to be as well. Like, you can't you can't be a different person and then expect your child to grow up in another way, because
Facts.
kids are really very much do as I do, not say. So my dad can tell me one thing, but if I see him doing another thing, I'm like, you do it. So here I am. I'm going to do the same thing. So I feel like as men, especially, those of us who will be fathers soon, by the grace of God, right? What we'll need to do is actually make those changes within ourselves first. And then we can now start showing our children how to live by virtue of how we are living.
Yeah.
I think that's really where we need to get to. So if we don't make changes to ourselves, it's just going to continue, really. Imagine like telling your son, for example, not you, God forbid, I know you just come back, God forbid. But imagine like telling your son that, one woman man, don't cheat, da. But every time you guys go to parties, he's always seeing you, touching up on women and flirting and all these things. Those are the things he's going to actually take note of.
And you expect him to be,
you can't expect him
of course,
to be something else. Yeah.
Temidayo, I hear you're a Man United fan.
I am.
So, who is your favorite United player of all time?
Of all time?
Of all time.
Wayne Rooney.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
guy, we're exactly the same.
The most underrated player ever.
Exactly
just
the same.
So deep.
That was my guy. That's my go-to.
Really. But special shout out to guys like Ander Herrera. Special shout out to Nwani. Special shout out to
bowlers there.
Bro, I loved Herrera. Special shout out to him. Special shout out to Nwani. Special shout out to Evra. Those three.
Patrice.
Love them.
Okay, night in or night out?
All in, all day.
I swear it's funny. Every single guest has said night in. Someone must be lying.
No, night in all day. Like.
All right. Favorite holiday destination?
Singapore.
Okay.
Dubai.
What about Singapore?
It feels like home to me, really. I used to go there a lot when I was a kid. So I'm very comfortable there. And it's just peaceful. You can sleep on the streets. By the time you wake up, somebody would have put a blanket over you. Just nice. And they're good scenes. Dubai is obviously very nice. Those two are pretty.
Okay. What do you think is the best thing about being a man?
Best thing about being a man.
Interesting one.
Yeah, good one. Finding a good wife, I would say.
Okay.
Finding a good woman.
Okay.
Probably a cool thing about being a man.
Okay. Favorite music artist of all time?
Favorite music artist I don't have of all time.
Tough.
Wait, so
if you had to pick one.
I had to pick one. My brother, I don't know. Wait. I must answer. When I was young, I really loved Lil Wayne.
Okay.
So I might have to stick with that.
Okay. That's a good one.
My baby will be so disappointed. Lil Wayne is up there. Maverick City also up there.
Okay. Yeah. You have to add Maverick City.
Yeah.
Favorite things to do to relax?
Just chill with my baby girl.
Just chill.
Yeah, chill with my baby girl. Football. Play football a lot.
I hear you're pretty good.
I'm a baller.
Would you rather be able to change something in your past or see the future?
I don't think I want to see the future. If I change anything about my past, what would it be? Honestly, I think I'm okay. I'd rather not do anything.
Just leave it as is.
Literally just leave it.
Okay, so final one.
Just mess with my head.
Name any Nigerian in history that you would have loved to have like a sit down or dinner with. Anybody.
Any Nigerian in history. Any Nigerian in history. I'm trying to think about my interests. Okay, so let me name a couple.
Okay.
So one person, just based on my interests, one person I would like to talk to properly is maybe JJ Okocha.
Okay.
Another one would be a past president, and I would probably say Obasanjo.
Okay.
Yeah,
those two.
Yeah, those two probably.
All right, nice one, bro.
Yeah, nice one, man. Interesting question.
Yeah. So with friendships, how as men do we foster more healthy relationships and friendships? As guys, and it's not necessarily a bad thing that we're a bit more light in terms of our conversation. Sometimes we go we watch the game, we have a few drinks, things like that. Do you think this is sufficient, or like how do you think we can create more healthy structures and dynamics in our friendships?
Okay, great question. Great question, because I feel like this is something I've been really navigating over the past year or so, right? I think with friendships, you have to be intentional, because if you're not intentional, what's going to end up happening is you link up, you play FIFA probably, you watch football probably, talk about work probably. Maybe you can touch on, you might not talk about your relationship, but you can talk about girls, right? that's probably, I think I probably like touched on the four main things that typically guys will talk about. But if you're not intentional to actually ask your guy, not like, how are you, but how are you?
How are you?
Do you get, like, I feel like one thing I always try and do is like, my friends always troll me with different things like, oh, somebody will say something. There's a new one now that everybody just says pause after something.
Yeah.
Fair enough, it's funny. But like, my guys always troll me because I hate it, because they're like, I'm like, just say the one you want to say. Like, not everything is about.
Yeah.
Because fair enough, it's funny, but I think initially it took me a while to warm up to it, because I'm like, why are you stopping somebody from expressing what they want to express in the way they want to express it? So I feel like I took it a bit too personally. Fair enough. But like, things like that, I'm just very intentional. I try to be very intentional about just showing that it's okay to be whoever you want to be. Like, again, my dad, for example, my dad always says, love you, baby, on the phone. And so in my mind, that can never be a weird thing. Like, imagine me saying love you, baby to my guy and he's telling me it's weird. I'm like, huh? What? I talk to my dad like that. So
that's interesting.
Do you get what I mean? So like, things like that, I feel like if you are in friendship groups, especially guy friendship groups, because if you're in friendship groups with women, chances are they'll bring it up. That's just a fact. But with guys, it's different. Like, you actually have to, if you want it, you have to dig for it. And I think I would always say that I would say that there's no harm in like learning from female friendships. Like, how do you relate with your female friends? What do you guys talk about? And then maybe ask your guys the same thing. Like, so yeah, I would say things like that. And then also, I would also say like, obviously, friendships usually stem from shared interests and like things like that typically, right? But I would also say like maybe trying to find new things to do together, trying to find, just things like that.
Yeah, I think those are great examples, because I think it's that intentionality, like you said, and
it all stems from that.
Yeah, because you do have to dig in a bit more and just really ask how they are, and you always find out there's always something.
Yeah.
You just have to, again, your friends, so you know like the ways to get to it.
There's one guy that we became friends recently, and from the outside, I always thought he was a bit like, but when we became friends, I realized that he's actually one of the sweetest guys, and it was a shock to me. But it's just because I never asked. So the moment we started talking and started having conversations about different things, I started seeing his views on different things. I was like, this guy is actually such a darling.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I just feel like you just need to ask.
The example with your dad, like saying they love you, baby.
Yeah,
I remember growing up, there was a friend of mine that he and his dad, like, they would literally like peck, like, when they're going by, like that kind of like cheek peck, and I always found it very weird, because that's not how I grew up.
Being young,
but like their relationship, like, they're so close, right? And again, it's just kind of breaking the stereotype. Doesn't mean I'm going to do that with my son, but I think those little things, I think they make a big difference in terms of that communication. So maybe you'll be a bit more open to having closer male friendships and digging in a bit deeper. Like, I know Michael Famaroti, and I'll give him a shout out. He's one of those guys, like, he's going to dig, and like, he's always going to make sure that you're good, and he's not scared about talking about the weird things, this or that. So I think there are people that are just very genuinely interested in knowing who you are and knowing what's going on in your life. And not that other people aren't, it's just, I guess, they don't have the tools. They don't have the tools to. And that's why you gave some great examples about creating those structures, learning from some of our female friendships.
I would also, that female friendship thing, I was just going to touch on, like, recently, my fiance and her friends added me, my best friend Toby, and their guys. I don't even know how it's happened, but it just happened. So now all of us have ended up in one group chat. And those are the guys that are really teaching me, because I see how they are friends. Because one day I asked my fiance, how come you guys can stay on the phone for 12 hours? And then one day we had a call. Before I knew it, 4.5 hours had passed. And then one of them was like, she was like, I'm sure now you can see, because there's so much to talk about. And I feel like as guys, we just don't know. So yeah, since we're doing shout out to them, shout out to the grapes.
Yeah, great one, bro. So coping mechanisms, what are, for the stresses of like that society has placed on us, and as men and women are placed on us, what are the great coping mechanisms that you would suggest? I know you've mentioned Christ a few times, and I will touch a bit on God and how this ties in. So I mean, I'm answering that question. I think that's one, but I don't know what coping mechanisms do you think can help us as men to deal with these stresses and pressures of society?
Okay. So I think I'll first start by saying everyone is different, right? So you really just have to find what works for you. On my relationship with God, one thing I've learned and realized is that it helps me with vulnerability because I can be vulnerable with God. So it makes it easier for me to be vulnerable with other people. I find that if you come to churches, you see that most of the people there are women. And I just think it's because fundamentally, a lot more guys are just find it harder to be vulnerable with God, which is fair. Like you can kind of understand and see where it comes from. But I feel like that is one thing that has really, 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 really helped in terms of coping and in terms of hope, because that's also very important. Yeah, so that's one. I mean, therapy is an obvious one as well. I feel like, but then again, like if you go to the beautiful thing about therapists is that they'll dig, so that helps, right? So even if you once they ask you how are you, you say fine, they'll ask you more questions. So that's another thing that I would say. From funny enough, I've never done therapy, weirdly, but I've obviously helped people get therapy sessions, and in my experience, I found that it's something that really, really helps. What else? Friends are key. Friends are key. Not really because they'll give you answers, but just sometimes it's good to just offload, and then also just help get your mind off of certain things. What else? Journaling is a good one. Interestingly, journaling is a good thing. I think I started journaling recently in prayer, but then I've started journaling more things now. Just I don't do it every day, but just like maybe like once a week or once every 2 weeks here and there. I'll just journal like things that have happened, how I've been feeling, what can I do, things I would like to happen, those kind of things. I feel like it just helps you compartmentalize how you're thinking and like what things you want to do and things like that. I just feel like those are probably a couple of things I'll say.
I think I was just laughing because I had Mazzino here a few weeks ago, and we spoke about like the dynamics in terms of like God and like men, and like the fact that whether like toxic masculinity sometimes even affects our relationship with God because it's like kind of speaking to another man like help me.
It does,
it's actually funny that
imagine kneeling down to another man.
I always find that funny. But yeah, I think those are some great coping mechanisms and. I think, everybody, all guys here, honestly, we should look into those things. So we've spoken about all these things now, and some like how we even spoke about like men, sometimes we go out, drinking, just gisting, a bit surface. And sometimes it feels like masculinity, especially in today's society, people make masculinity seem inherently toxic or shallow, right?
That's true.
And I think there is some merit to actually being light in like, sometimes having those, just doing those things. So I want to know like parts of the Man Up overview, like on your page, it says it was founded to create a world where all men know and take their places as true leaders of society. Without the development of men, society will not develop in the way that it was intended to. So with all these things I said that are seen to be somewhat inherently toxic in men, maybe again, sometimes the dynamics of our relationships or the fact that men always want to kind of, be leaders or we feel like we need to control society, blah, blah, blah. So it's a fine balance between it being toxic, but also your page is kind of saying that this is what men are meant to be doing in sense of the leadership, in sense of, being the true leader of society and things like that. So is it toxic in that sense? Or like are men meant to really take up that role in society? What role do you feel men should take in society?
Yes, exactly that. I think, but then I think the difference is that what does leadership then mean to you? Because I went to study business, and they'll teach you about different types of leaders. The one that he doesn't let anyone else make decisions, autocratic. Then there's democratic. Then there's laissez faire. Like there are different ways, right? But thinking about leadership as service, I feel like that in itself says everything. Because if you tell me that as a man that serves, I'm toxic. Cool. Like, I don't mind. Like, if that's how I'm living my life, I'm serving you. I'm serving women around me. Do you get what I mean? I'm obviously also serving myself. Like, I feel like that is the aspect of when we say true leadership. It needs to be true as intended, and I think that's at least for me. Again, somebody might have an opposing view. You might say I'm saying rubbish. Fine, fair enough. We can talk about it. But like, but I feel like a lot of people have lost grasp of what leadership is, and I think I'm learning a lot more every day. But I've come to the point of realizing that actually leadership should be in service. And again, there is a balance because I also always say every strength taken too far is a weakness. And I think the weakness now that men are a lot more, oh no, things must be like this, like that kind of leadership. I feel like it's probably started off as a strength because you could take charge and do things. But now we've kind of, maybe a lot of us are kind of gotten over our heads, in over our heads a little bit. But yeah, I feel like because there is a balance, sometimes you will need that. Like even if you look at Jesus, there was a time he got upset and scattered when they were selling
the
things
temple.
and so what that has taught me is that there'll be times when you actually need to put your foot down and say, no, like this is rubbish. So you actually just need to learn that and find the balance. But if we don't have that heart of service, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Honestly, if I could stand up and give you an applause right now, because honestly, I think you captured it perfectly, and which is why we're having this conversation. Because as men, I think the definition of leadership is that's what's lacking right now, right? Because even like again in the Bible and like man and wife and things like that, when the reason why women sometimes are disconnecting from men or going away from men is because we've kind of warped what that word should mean. So leadership isn't necessarily, like I said, there are times where you have to lead and put your foot down, blah, blah, blah. But leadership, first and foremost, in society as a man and as a husband, is service, right? So if you lead correctly and you're providing service, right, for people around you, for the weak, for your wife, or for whatever, I think that would completely change how some of these things are looked at.
It completely change.
So I think it's a really, really great point. And I think as society and as men, if we understand leadership and if we play that role, again, not playing it to your detriment, like say, of course, you still have to recharge, you still have to ask for help. You can't, you can't do everything yourself. And yes, so
but you know the funny thing, even if you think about it, you can't do everything yourself. If I'm living a life of service, and let's say you as my best friend are also living a life of service, you realize that I'm carrying on a lot and you try and help me. Do you get? Yeah. So like, because that's you trying to serve me. So like, I feel like if we all try, at the end of the day, we can't be perfect. That's just the honest truth. But if we try, we'll be so much better off.
Yeah. So this men are trash age so that way.
Oh my God. I don't even get me started on that.
What are your thoughts? And how do we change this narrative?
We just need to change. That's really it. Like I feel like men are trash is an accumulation of things. I don't think it just started one day. I think it started because a lot of women just realized that men, like, for lack of better words, this niggas ain't. And they're just like, but I think a lot of men just need to change. I think there's especially within the context of relationships, I would say that there's a massive lack of like discipline when it comes to relationships. And a lot of men just, I don't know where it came from really. Like I've been trying to think about how did this start, but I think it's just purely a lack of discipline whereby a lot of men just feel like they can have what they want and because they can, they will.
Because they can.
Yeah, and I think because like even the Bible says that like you can do all things, but it doesn't mean all things are right. Like, do you know what I mean? So because you can do something doesn't actually mean you should do it. And I feel like these are just honestly like simple things. I think like if we can just change, it would help a lot. And the truth is that no one is perfect. Even me saying I'm not perfect because I told my fiance a lot of what I do is, because women now also go for men that are, women don't care anymore because now they feel like men will cheat anyway. So I can go for whoever I want as well, which I think is crazy. But like now, by the time I told you earlier now, if I meet you in like 5 minutes, I've mentioned my girlfriend, my fiance maybe once or twice. So like I do that. I've programmed my mind to do that to make sure that I'm keeping myself accountable. Even people around me maybe can keep me accountable. Not because I'm a perfect man, but just because that's just how I found that has helped me to just keep.
Because you're not a perfect man. That's why.
Exactly.
That's exactly why those boundaries
like those little things that you do. I feel like we just need to, as a society of men, just get a lot more into it.
It's another thing I touch on it as well a lot on the show, that discipline and boundaries. And it's something as you get older you learn, because as men sometimes the reason again we need those boundaries because we are flawed, and the reason we need accountability is because we are flawed, right? And I always say my wife always, like I always tease her about this, I always say it's easier to just create boundaries and avoid something than to get get somewhere and try to run away to escape because you put yourself in a situation where again you're human, right? So it's best to just avoid it,
I agree with you.
and just and then to get there and start running and praying, God help me.
Be hoping that
exactly
you don't fall into
so that discipline, I think, as men is so key for all we're trying to do. So, and I think it kind of seeps into all aspects of your life, whether it's exercise, food, friendships, everything. So I think
and it's funny as well because guys are like, when it comes to things like exercise, guys are the most disciplined. So it's just like, how can you just translate that to
exactly.
Anyway,
great. So relationships, again, continue on that. I don't know if Manhood, you guys talk about, so we talk about men and how we can be better, how we can serve, how we can better, manage our relationships, our friendships. So do you guys talk about anything in terms of like relationships and marriage and steps men to take to get like a successful union?
So we actually haven't done, so I remember I mentioned earlier about things we're transitioning into, right? So that's going to come. But we actually, up until now, we haven't done anything on relationships, which thinking about is kind of interesting. Why not? But we kind of have focused on younger men and then maybe parents here and there, like older. So that kind of gap of people who are parents, people who were parents, and then younger men who are trying to like grow up into. But yeah, go on. I think you were.
So I think it's another. So I think we just kind of briefly touch on it now. So in terms of, I think as men, it's part of what you're doing. I think is that you should also kind of add that going forward because honestly, it's teaching them discipline, habits. The kind of counseling. I did my marriage counseling as well. And there's so many things I learned. Being a man.
It's crazy.
It's so illuminating, crazy. So I think those conversations are great. And like I said, the most important thing, I think, first of all, apart from showing your wife love, respect, your fiance love, respect, also the discipline, the boundaries, praying for wisdom every day. That's like one prayer I have. Like I pray for wisdom every day. Just not just for like career, but also like my household and things like that. I think as men, again, these conversations I think are very important to have because I don't think it's very cool to have. Like imagine like with your guys, like how do I how to be the best husband I can be. I think I think wives or women are more inclined to dads are not like how to be the best husband. Even my growing up, again this with dads is like watching how my dad was a great husband to my mother, but my mother was very much like, oh my God, like you need to do this. Do you need to do this to be a good husband? You know what I'm saying? So I think again, as men, like it's very important to have these conversations. So the next generation and like younger men are, it's not uncool. It's not.
You can actually have a comfortable.
You can have a comfortable conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So another interesting topic on this whole space is like the red pill movement with them Andrew Tate, them guys, so those side.
It's like a hyper masculinity of some
so
sort.
I don't know. Have you like followed like stuff like that much?
Yeah.
And, like why do you think that movement is growing really fast? And how do you advise like young men that are seeing Andrew Tate saying like fuck bitches, sleep with like 50, you have to be a man, you have to like sleep with like 50 women. It's all about what you can. You have to be a high value man, you have to have all the cars, this and that and that. I don't know what are your thoughts on that.
Honestly, I try not to have too many thoughts on that because I don't want to feed it. But I think it's gone so far because it sells. That's just the honest truth. If someone is teaching you how to get fit, make money, and get girls, think about it now. It's a sell. So like I understand why it's gone so far.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think what I would say is that what that movement does really pits men against women fundamentally, and I don't like it. Because I think the guy, there's probably a lot of context I don't have because like I said, I try not to engage just so I don't even get, tainted or it's just funny. But yeah, no, I think a lot of what he says is like women don't care. Your woman is going to leave you if this, she's not going to respect you if this. And I feel like, again, fundamentally, all those things are wrong. But on the other hand, there are also a lot of women, especially within those societies, that fit into that bucket. So, for example, if as a guy, he's saying X, Y, Z, but you look around and you're like, no, nobody around me, things like that, you're going to be like, this guy's chatting. But then if you actually look around and you're like, oh, low-key, this girl, she's kind of similar to that. This girl, she's kind of similar to that. I feel like as a society as a whole, like it's not only men that need to battle this, basically is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like as a society as a whole, we need to actually start changing like men and women because the more women become materialistic, the more women become focused on things external, money, car, job, those kind of things, the more men are going to believe what he's saying.
It's like a cycle,
It's a
kind of.
cycle.
So it's just feeding into each other.
If we both don't change, even if the men change and the women don't change, it's still gonna come back eventually. So we both need to, like, men and women as a whole, we both need to actually band together and battle, because it's I feel like it's low-key killing people. Because honestly, if there was even an aspect of what he was saying that was like, make sure you take care of your mental health, I can be like, okay, at least, okay, maybe he's trying to get you a balance, but I don't even hear that. It's like, it's almost like, who cares? Why are you telling your wife your problem? I watched a video recently. One guy was talking about how he can't tell his wife about the struggles of his day. He'd rather tell his friends because that's his tribe. He kept on saying tribe. And that because they can relate and they are meant to. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're married.
Yeah.
You get, and especially because of me, I think I take two becoming one very seriously. It's like, you can't keep anything from yourself. Okay, does that mean she's not smart enough to help you with your problems, or she's not? I don't know. Like, it just brought a lot of questions up. I'm like, those kind of things are harming marriages. Imagine that. Imagine my wife doesn't know I've been going through it at work. All of a sudden, she finds out one day. She's just gonna be like,
yeah.
You get. So yeah, I feel like, that as a society as a whole need to battle this
together.
I would like to call it hyper-masculinity movement, whatever.
I think it's the young men watching that are not really understanding, having experiences in life and seeing that. So that is kind of a big problem, right? Because we're trying to speak to the next generation, but they're hearing that you hear them speak, like, all they want is cars, women, things like that. And for them, that's what being a man is. So I think that's the scary part. But like you said, those, like, not feeding into it, and like society together, kind of working together to help with that situation. But it's going to be a tough battle because it's everywhere. And again, it's flashier. That's what sells, right?
It is,
if you think about it,
fast.
if you're a young guy that maybe is a bit misguided, would you rather the definition of a man be to get money and get women, or society, or definition of
service,
that, or to be service? Like, how that sounds very boring, right? So again,
that's I feel like a lot of men also don't realize that you can have money. It's not about money. That's actually the most important thing. So yeah.
Okay, so to end, we normally have a segment called the redemption segment. So I don't know, has there been any moments in your life as a man that, whether it's work, career, relationship, anything that, you kind of went through it and you kind of failed or struggled at it and you were able to overcome?
Oh, wow.
Tough one.
Really tough.
So anything that stands out that, like, you were like, wow, like, I actually didn't get this right, but you were able to, like, pull through and
turn
overcome.
Around.
Yes.
Okay. Man, honestly, I'm a work in progress also. There's a lot. But one thing I would say hit me the deepest was probably when my mom died. Bear in mind then, there was no Manhood, there was nothing. I became numb. I became very numb. And I numbed myself even more because I started smoking weed a lot. I've quit now. God has really helped me to overcome that. But what that did was, imagine like a vase, right? So imagine if a vase breaks, but you have all the pieces, right? So it's like I put myself back together a bit, but the glue was really weak. So like, you pour water inside, but there are holes, that kind of thing. So I feel like I really failed at that. And then what showed me was that something else happened. And it was deep, but it wasn't that deep. But I was shattered again. And I was like, I felt like the vase had broken again. I'm like, I realized, like, am I this weak? Like, not weak in terms of this thing is hurting me, but is my vase this weak?
Yes.
So I think, again, it all goes back to God for me, because, God really helps put me back together a lot stronger. So now, like, I feel like, again, it's not to say I don't show emotions. I cry a lot. In fact, I cried on the plane when I was watching something on the way back. So like, it's not even about that, but it's just about, how do you face adversity? How do you react to failure? How do you react to XYZ? So I feel like now, like, I'm a lot stronger. My vase is a lot stronger. I like that analogy. It just helps people visualize things a lot better.
I love that. So again, I think just mentioning God there, because I said I'm going to speak about that. So with if like being a man and struggling and going through these pressures, like, the importance of God has been very prevalent.
Key
for you.
Key. It's changed my life, honestly speaking, because it's so funny, because people think you have money, so you don't need God, right? But then I feel like the moments I decided to get serious with God, honestly, bro, my whole life changed. Like, I just realized that so many things that I thought were so important are just not. And I have a lot of peace now. I have a lot of joy now. Literally, like all those fruits. I don't stress about anything. I live a simple life. I don't need anything in terms of God has helped me in terms of I don't starve. Do you get what I mean? Like doesn't mean I have all the money in the world, but like I'm content. Do you get what I mean? And I'm always I want the best for myself and my family. So I'm gonna keep working hard. But wherever God has placed me, I am actually content. So I feel like it really just changed my whole life, honestly speaking.
I love that, bro. So, bro, this has been so amazing,
Yeah, it's
man.
been good, it's been good.
Again, having these conversations is just so good, and I thank you so much for coming.
No, please,
my
and
I really appreciate it.
Nice one, bro.
Everybody, please go follow the Man Up Initiative on Instagram. We're growing and they're doing great things for young men. And again, as you know, on this channel, I'm trying to build a community for young Nigerians, especially young men. So please, if you have any questions or comments, please leave in the comment section below. Or anything on Instagram, you can follow me, the Emeka Nwani Show. If you have any questions or dilemmas that you want, to be answered,
dilemmas are fun.
I'll love to answer them. So please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And see you again later. Take care.
Peace out.